The fear of criticism. Just how many originally came by this fear, no one can state definitely, but one thing is certain he has it in a highly developed form. Some believe that this fear made its appearance about the time that politics became a profession. Others believe it can be traced to the age when women first began to concern themselves with styles in wearing apparel. This author, being neither humorist nor appropriate, is inclined to attribute the basic fear of criticism to that part of a man's inherited nature which prompt him not only to take away his fellow man good and wares but to justify his action by criticism to his fellow man character. It is well known fact that a thief will criticize the man from whom he steals, that politicians seek office not by displaying their own virtues and qualification, but by attempting to besmirch their opponent. The fear of criticism takes on many forms, the majority of which are petty and trivial, bald headed men, for example, are bald for no other reason than their fear of criticism. Hats become bald because of the tight fitting bands of head which cut off the circulation from the roots of the hair. Men wear hats not because they usually need them, but mainly because everyone is doing it. The individual falls into line and thus likewise lest someone other individual criticize him. Women seldom have bald heads or even thin hairs because they wear hats which fit their head loosely. The above purpose of the hats being adornment. But it must not be supposed that women are free from the fear of criticism. If any woman claims to be superior to men with reference to this fear, ask her to walk down the street wearing a hat of the vintage of 1980s 90. The astute manufacturers of clothing have not been slow to capitalize this basic fear of criticism with which all mankind has been cursed. Every season, the style in many articles of wearing apparel change. Who's established the styles? Certainly not the purchaser of clothing, but the manufacturer. Why does he change the style so often? The answer is obvious. He changed the style so he can sell more clothes. For the same reason, the manufacture of automobiles, with a few rare and very sensible exceptions, change styles of models every season. No one wanted to drive an automobile which is not the latest style, although the older model may actually be the better car. We have been describing the manner in which people behave under the influence of fear of criticism and as applied to the small and petty things of life. Let us now examine human behavior when this fear affects people in connection with the more important events of human relationship. Take, for example, practically any person who has reached the age of mental maturity from 35 to 45 years of age as a general average, and if you could read the secret thoughts of his mind, you would find a very decided disbelief in most of the fables taught by the majority of the dogmatists and theologians a few decades back. Not often, however, will you find a person who has courage to openly state his belief on this subject. Most people will, if press far enough, tell a lie rather than admit that they do not believe the stories associated with that from form of religion which held people in bondage prior to the age of scientific discovery and education. Why does the average person, even in this day of enlightenment, shy away from denying this, his belief in the fables which were the basis of most of the religion a few decades ago? The answer is because of the fear of criticism. Men and women have been burned at the stake for daring to express disbelief in ghosts. It has no wonder we have inherited a consciousness which make us fear criticism. The time was, and not so far in the past, when criticism carried severe punishment. It still does in some countries. The fear of criticism robs man of his initiative, destroys his power of imagination, limits his individuality, takes away his self-reliance, and does him damage in 100 other ways. Parents often do their children irre- irreparable injury by criticism them. The mother of one of my boyhood chums used to punish him with a such almost daily, almost completing the job with the statement, "You will land in the penitentiary before you are 20." He was sent to a reformatory at the age of the 17. Criticism is the one form of service of which everyone has too much. Everyone has a stock of it which it handed out gratis, whether called for or not. One's nearest relative often are the worst offenders. It should be reorganized as a crime. In reality, it is a crime of the worst nature for any parent to rebuild inferiority complex in the minds of a child. Through unnecessary criticism, employers who understand human nature get the best there is in man, not by criticism but by constructive suggestion. Parents may accomplish the same results with their children. Criticism will plant fear in the human heart or resentment, but it will not build love or affection. Symptoms of the fear of criticism. This fear is almost as universal as the fear of poverty, and its effects are just as fatal to personal achievement, mainly because this fear destroys initiative and discourages the use of imagination. The major symptoms of the fear are self-consciousness, generally expressed through nervousness, timidity in conversation and in meeting strangers, awkward movement of the hand and limbs, shifting of the eye, lack of voice expressed through lack of voice control, nervousness in the presence of other, poor postures of body, poor memory, personality lacking in firmness of decision, personal charm, an ability to express opinion. Definitely the habit of sidestepping issues instead of meeting them squarely, agreeing with others without careful examination of their opinion. Inferiority complex, the habit of expressing self-approve by word of mouth and by actions as a means of covering up a feel of inferiority, using big words to impress others, often without knowing the real meaning of the word, imitating others in dress, speech, and manner, boosting of imaginary achievement. This sometimes give a surface appearance of a feeling of superiority. Extravagance, the habit of trying to keep up with the Johnny's spending beyond one's income, lack of initiative, failure to embrace opportunities for self advancement, fear to express opinions, lack of confidence in one's ideas, giving evasive answers to questions asked by superiors, hesitancy of manners and speech, deceit in both words and deeds, lack of ambition, mental and physical laziness, lack of self assertion, slowness in reaching decisions, easily influenced by others, the habit of criticizing others behind their back and flattering them to their faces, the habit of accepting defeat without protest, quieting an undertaking when opposed by others, suspicious of other people without cause, lacking in tactfulness of manner and speech, unwillingness to accept the blame for mistakes. The fear of ill health. This fear may be traced to both physical and social heredity. It is closely associated as to its origin with the cause of fear of old age and the fear of death, because it leads one closely to the border of terrible worlds of which man knows not, but concerning which he has been taught some discomforting stories. The opinion in some somewhat general also that certain unethical people engaged in the business of selling health have had not a little to do with keeping alive the fear of ill health. In the main, man fears ill health because of the terrible pictures which have been planted in his mind of what may happen if that should overtake him. He also fear it because of the economic tool which it may claim. A reputable physician estimated that 75% of all people who visit physicians for professional service are suffering with the hypochondria, imaginary illness. It has been shown most convincingly that the fear of disease, even where there is not the slightest cause for fear, often produce the physical symptoms of the disease fear. Powerful and mighty is the human mind. It builds or it destroys, playing upon this common weakness of fear of ill health. Dispensers of patent medicines have reaped fortune. This form of imposition upon credulous humanity became so prevalent some 20 years ago that Collier's weekly magazines conducted a bitter campaign against some of the worst offender in the patent medicine business. During the flu epidemic, which broke out during the World War, the mayor of the New York City took drastic steps to check the damage which people were doing themselves through their inherent fear of ill health. He called in the newspapermen and said to them, "Gentlemen, I feel it necessary to ask you not to publish any scare headline concerning the flu epidemic unless you cooperate with me. We will have a situation which we cannot control." The newspaper quite publishing stories about the flu, and within 1 month, the epidemic had been successful checked. Through a series of experiments conducted some years ago, it was proved that people may be made ill by suggestion. We conducted this experiment by causing three assistants to visit the victims, each of whom asked the question that ails you. You look terribly ill. The first questions usually provoke a grin and nonchalant, "Oh, nothing, I am all right," from the victim. The second questioner usually was answered with the statement, "I don't know exactly, but I do feel badly." The third question was usually met with the frank admission that the victim was actually feeling ill. Try this on an acquaintance if you doubt that it will make him uncomfortable, but do not carry the experiment too far. There is a certain religious sect whose members take vengeance upon their enemies by the hexing method. They call it placing a spells on the victims. There is overwhelming evidence that disease sometimes begins in the form of negative thoughts impulse. Such an impulse may be passed from one mind to another by suggestion or created by an individual in his own mind. A man who has blessed with more wisdom than his this incident might indicate once said, "When anyone asks me how I feel, I always want to answer by knocking him down." Doctors send, I always want to answer by knocking him down. Doctors and patients into new clamors for their health because a change of mental attitude is necessary. The seeds of fear of ill health lives in every human mind's very fear, discouragement, disappointment in love and business affairs cause these seeds to germinate and grow. The recent business depression kept the doctors on the run because every form of negative thinking may cause ill health. Disappointment in business and in love stand at the head of the list of the cause of fear of ill health. A young man suffered a disappointment in love which sent him to the hospital for months. He hovered between life and death. A specialist in suggestive hermeneutics was called in. The specialist changed nurses, placing him in charge of a very charming young woman who begins by prearrangement with the doctor to make love to him the first day of her arrival on the job. Within 3 weeks, the patient was discharged from the hospital, still suffering but with an entirely different malady. He was in love again. The remedy was a hoax, but the patient and the nurse were later married but are in good health at the time of this writing. Auto suggestions, the habit of negative use of self suggestions by looking for and expecting to find the symptoms of all kind of disease, enjoying imaginary illness and speaking of as being real, the habit of trying all faiths and ism recommended by others as having therapeutic value, talking to others of operation in accident and other form of illness, experimenting with diets, physical experience, and reducing symptoms without professional guidance, trying home remedies, patent medicine, and quick remedies. Hypochondria, the habit of talking of illness, concentrating the mind upon disease and expecting its appearance until a nervous break over. Nothing that comes in bottles can cure this condition. It is brought on by negative thinking, and nothing but positive thoughts can affect a cure. Hypochondria, a medical term for imaginary disease, is said to do as much damage on occasion as a disease on fears might do. Most so-called cases of nerves come from imaginary illness. Exercise, fear of ill health often interferes with proper physical exercise and results in overweight by causing one to avoid outdoor life. Susceptibility, fear of ill health, breakdown, nature, body resistance, and creates a favorable condition for one form of disease one may contact. The fear of ill health often is related to the fear of poverty, especially in the case of the hypochondria who constantly worries about the possibilities of having to pay doctor's bills, the hospital bills, etc. This type of person spends much time preparing for sickness, talking about that, saving. The fear of ill health often is related to the fear of poverty, especially in the case of hypochondria, who constantly worries about the possibility of having to pay doctor bills, hospital bills, and etc. This type of person spends much time preparing for sickness, talking about death, saving money for cere- cemetery lots and burial expenses, etc. Self coddling,